Okay, so good day. My name is Swapnil. I'll be your other MC, not as proficient as Janine, but I'll do my best. If you've been struggling with helping leadership transition from a content management system to Docs as code, this next talk is for you. Now, let me tell you a little secret about our next speaker. He break dances. I'm sure we'll get to see some of that today. Now look, sadly the 2024 Olympic breakdancing team has missed out on his smooth moves. But fortunately for us, that's given him more time to devote to his role as the CEO of redocker. Adam is a perpetual student of life and a father of 3 avid readers and is here from Austin, Texas. He's also my ex-manager, by the way, so I'm a bit nervous as much as he is. He's also a first-time public speaker at a Write the Docs conference, so please welcome Adam Altman to the stage. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Swapnil. It's a pleasure to be here. Write the Docs is my favorite conference. And thank you all for inviting me to speak. It's a safe and supportive place and a friendly place. And I want you to feel comfortable engaging with me for the next 30 minutes from a place of safety and growth and not from a place of insecurity and judgment. So I can't adopt docs as code. Raise your hand if you've thought that before or, if you've said that before. All right, keep them up, keep them up. I can't help you adopt docs as code. Who else in the room has thought that, thinking of one of your colleagues or teammate? All right, well, you can put them down. You're in the right place. This talk is for you. All right, so who here has already adopted docs as code and helped others do that? All right, come on up here. I'm going to need you to finish the talk for me. All right, just kidding. So everybody, you got to see, there's a lot of people who have done it before. That's great. You're our role models. Thank you. So I'm guessing for a lot of you, this probably isn't your first time trying to adopt docs as code. The first thing I want to mention is that if you've only thought about it, or even if you've tried it and had trouble before, that's okay. There's a lot of information out there, and it can be confusing. Many times, information overload can keep you from success. If you've been concerned in the past that you can't succeed with docs as code, I want you to put those fears to rest. You can do this. You need the right person to explain it to you. Incentivized consultants and companies want you to think that you need some computer science degree or the support of a giant company to be successful. I'm here to tell you they're wrong. They have their own reasons for wanting you to think that, but that's not true. If you've ever thought that they want you to fail, you're probably right. They have no reason to change from the status quo. The difference with me is that I actually care about your success and want to see your transformation. So that's what we're here for. I know you have a dream to change the way you collaborate and make an impact. And I want to show you how to make that happen during this talk. So my goal for this presentation is to help 2 types of people. For those who are beginners, you'll get a path to follow to adopt docs as code. And for those more experienced people, you'll learn how to help those who look to you for advice. Yes, even self-proclaimed experts need help and fine-tuning. In the next 30 minutes, my goal is to get you to believe that the ABCs of docs strategy is the key to unlock docs as code adoption at your company. And I'm going to show you my frameworks that will make it simple, not easy, for you to achieve that. In the past 8 years, I've had an amazing chance to adopt Docs as code following the ABCs of Docs strategy. And I've also been able to help other people adopt it by overcoming objections. But it wasn't always that way. In fact, just a handful of years ago, I was like you. I am Adam Altman, the founder of Rebilly, and Redocker grew out of Rebilly. It's connected to this story. Rebilly needed more customers to sustain itself. It was almost game over. One initiative involved a platform strategy. That meant standards, governance, and self-service. In practice, we needed to start by completing a marketing website rewrite and redesign. We were happy with our design, but couldn't figure out how to turn it into a functional theme in our CMS. At the same time, we made a mistake. Our help docs were in a separate CMS provided by our support system. And we had a few cases of looking really incompetent because pages had incomplete docs, as if someone was in the middle of a cut and paste operation when they accidentally hit save. And we couldn't figure out who or how this was happening. Some people had some suspicions. We were near the tail end of an evaluation with a substantial prospect, and then they moved on. Was it the docs gremlin? It was gut-wrenching. I took a walk to relax, and I had some questions pop into my mind. Why do developers always make the best tools for themselves? And will we be stuck with tracking changes and bad CMSs forever? Aha! Developers use Docs as code to increase velocity and benefit from previews, collaboration, reviews, audit trails, and more. What if non-developers could do that too? Then we could have our marketing site, blog, user docs, and developer docs workflows unified. We could adopt open standards and say goodbye to those mysterious gremlins. We would build out this dream following a Docs as code approach. A script would convert text and image files into a website. It's called a static site generator, or an SSG. The strategy we took to get there, I called the ABCs of Docs. The result was great. We had a unified website, accountability, a review process, support, marketing, product, and developers working more closely together, brought together by a common practice. And Rebilly transformed from a SaaS into a platform with self-service standards and governance in place. This allowed them to scale from servicing 15 merchants to over 100,000 merchants without any other magic or that much workforce. So can you see how Docs as code is not an improvement over Rebilly's prior CMS database-backed Docs approach? Instead, it's a transformation. Rebilly became a platform. We unified our website, we unified our team, and we became redockers. So who are redockers? Some people think I mean Redocker employees or users. I don't. Redockers believe in open standards. That self-service gives honor and respect to the people. Docs can always improve, and it's our duty to make that happen. Our training and learning is never complete. We are open to new ideas and new methods, and we are stronger together as a community. So I'm going to switch hats now. After all, the goal of this talk is to help you overcome obstacles to Docs code adoption. So now I put on my Redocker hat. At Rebilly, we transformed into a platform. And at Redocker, our vision is to accelerate self-service, standards adoption, and governance, and show people how to explain their APIs. One of the stages in that process is adopting Docs as code, or Docs like code. I use these interchangeably, by the way. I've had the good fortune of speaking to thousands of people in varying points of their journey that encounter a variety of obstacles. Let's look at what they are and the strategy to overcome them. So here's what we're going to cover during the next 15 minutes or so. Number one, assess. Is Docs code right for your company or organization? Number two, build. Try Docs code in under 30 minutes. And number three, convince. How to ethically convince your boss or company to adopt Docs as code. We're going to review them in the sequence I learned them myself. So jumping right into number two. No pun intended. I wanted to get these Dream Docs launched ASAP, but I didn't know where to start. I tried converting a help doc article into a markdown file, and then I rendered it. Then Caesar Level, who designed the marketing pages, said we could try to make each type of page, do a sample of each type of page, and then estimate the total amount of work once we get a little experience. That made sense. There was no way we could find to export these help docs, and there were about 100 of them. So it was going to require a little bit of elbow grease to convert. And there were other types of content. Open API, well, that was actually the easy part. And then these new marketing pages. I didn't have the skill to try that myself. I knew we'd have to freeze our content changes to be able to migrate. And to keep the freeze as short as possible, we'd need to estimate the changes. Then we did the work. I thought we were ready to launch, but we forgot about the blog posts. Initially, we thought they should be out of scope. Then we decided it would be better if they were included too. So trying Docs code, I didn't know what to expect here, and I was happy to find it familiar to working with other files, like text and image files. I even knew Markdown a little. I later learned that knowing a little bit of Markdown is actually the same thing as knowing a lot of Markdown. So the new part was running the script to preview the website. I was able to do this and preview my first page within 30 minutes. We'll need to know the cost of migration in terms of time and money, and estimate that for each type of content. So we can do that based on what we learned from trying to convert different types of content. And there was also value in estimating out-of-scope content, as we learned. You'll be prepared to handle questions from your colleagues that way as well. I mentioned that I had a little Markdown and Git experience, but I was certain that anyone on our team could do Markdown, but I wasn't so sure about Git and that node script. I wanted to test this with non-developers to see how it goes. And I tried it with 3 people. Now I recommend starting with 1. The main work involved was installing the software they needed to run the script. They were all capable, but it was hard to tell what they would do in the face of a Git conflict. So what's a conflict? It's scary, like an, oh no, did I break something type of scary. To loosely paraphrase a children's book, fear is normal for every person on Earth. When you shine a light on them, the monsters aren't nearly as big as they seem at first. So a Git conflict blocks you from merging your content into the main branch until you resolve the conflict. This is a good thing because you don't want to overwrite someone else's work that happened while you were making your changes. So what happened to these newbies? I'll tell you what happened because they each experienced a Git conflict later on. They asked for help. Every one of them. But they told me that having 5 different systems was a bigger pain than having to ask for help. And 2 of them have since gone on to help others resolve their own Git conflicts. So now that you've got someone else who has made a page, ask them how much time they think it would take to make the next page, to migrate the next page into Markdown. Compare it to your estimates. You should adjust your estimates if you think they were unrealistic. Finally, ready to do the heavy lifting, but not so fast unless you don't have a lot of content. If you don't, you can migrate everything before you convince your team. If you do have a lot of content, then skip this step until you convince your team. The end result: open standards, review workflows, audit trails, and a unified team. So back to the first framework, assess. Is Docs' code right for your company? I learned this because Docs' code is not appropriate for everyone, and everyone's not able to do all of the work. Doing all the work in advance makes it easier to convince the boss when you can tell them exactly how little time is remaining to demo it to them and actually do the demo, right? Most people don't have that luxury. So is your industry or product software or software adjacent? If it's not, it might not be a good candidate for Docs' code. Are there software developers on the team anywhere? If not, it might not be a good candidate for Docs' code. We found that some content types map better to CMSs and databases than files, such as user-generated content, and certain types of structured data, like product and price lists. Also, personally identifiable information and other sensitive data, which you wouldn't want to store in source control. We found out now if we should consider Docs' code further. So next, we're moving on to the last and most important or challenging part of the framework. So I earned this one. Docs' code could be perfect for a company, yet if you try and convince the boss that it's a better mousetrap, they only hear mousetrap. And they think there's nothing wrong with the current mousetrap. After all, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's why you need to use ethical persuasion to convince your boss or company. It's ethical if you do the cost-benefit analysis in step 3 and truly believe that this will move your company further towards its vision and objectives. If you don't, stop. Change for the sake of change is painstaking. Be a positive light and influence, and save your asks for when you believe the change will positively impact your company. Explain Docs as code to a 3rd grader. I used to think a technically correct and complete explanation was better than a simplified explanation. Wow, I was wrong. So guess who wants technically correct explanations? Many engineers and technical writers do, but guess who wants explanations for better understanding? Well, everyone. And yes, and some engineers and tech writers too. So like I describe here, it's kind of like shared drives, but better because you can see exactly who changed each line. You need to understand who you're going to explain this to and explain it to them in terms that they understand. find the transformation, not the improvement. So it's not about like mediocre connection and better connection. It's about disconnection versus connection, or full service versus self-service, or one into many or many into one. And you have to find the transformation that makes sense for your company. It could be something that's aligned with your company's objectives. If your company has like annual goals or objectives, you might find it there. We can understand the cost from our size and scope step from before in the build phase. So this is made up of the time and effort and the further sacrifices needed to migrate. So that could be if you have to buy some products or hosting or whatever else you might need to make this happen. And that is the denominator in the value equation. The numerator is the benefits. So we need to understand the benefits. And that's the transformative outcome and the chances of success. So the more you've tried and tested, the more likely you are to succeed, which increases the value. So that's why it's important to, if you are able to migrate the content, to do that so that you can demo it. And that that increases the perceived likelihood of success, which increases the value. It's easiest to handle objections before they're raised. Come up with a short story for each objection. And for example, I used to think that Dox's code won't work at a company as big as ours. And then I found that all the biggest software companies in the world are using Dox's code. I tried it and can see how it works at scale. Something simple like that. All objections are variants of these three questions. Does Dox's code work? Will it work for our company? And can a blank do it? And that blank is usually I, whoever has that objection. They may not use the word I, but they might be meaning it. So let's look at the first question. Does Dox's code work? And some related common objections. So lack of features compared to traditional word processors. Inability to handle images or videos. Inability to reuse content. I saw a bunch of people in here who had raised their hands that they're using Dox's code, and they know that these are false. These are false beliefs. But you have to understand that people are coming to this with a place of, from a place, their own place, and it's going to be their place that has false beliefs, and it's going to be your job to help them change their beliefs. And a good way to do that is by doing it in advance, calling them out in advance explicitly. A lot of people don't even know what their own beliefs are, let alone to be able to verbalize them into specific objections and clear objections to you. So it's important to pre-raise these in advance. So now let's look at the second question. Will it work for our company? And some common related objections. Resistance to change. Difficulty integrating into other tools used in the organization. Handling complex formatting requirements. Lack of support for real-time collaboration and feedback. So again, all of these are, there are solutions to these in Dox's code land. And it's important to understand them before you try and convince your boss. Or actually, before you convince your boss, it's most important to convince yourself. Now, let's look at the third question, can I do it? And some related common objections. So there's concerns about using version control like Git, or concerns about Markdown. For each of these objections and others that you think will arise, you need to prepare your story and evidence to pre-handle the objections. You'll put all of this into a presentation that contains the elements, a title that describes the transformation. It explains Docs' code in their language. It's an assessment of if it works for your company. It's testimonials showing that everyone can do it. After all, if everyone couldn't do it, why would you want to do it? If it was going to exclude people, you wouldn't want to do that, right? I hope so. The value. So that's going to be showing the costs and benefits. And the demo. Maybe it's a partial demo because you have too much content to migrate. Maybe it's a full demo. And then stories to pre-handle objections, the other objections that you expect. Be sure to practice in the mirror and on at least one live person before you give the presentation to your boss. And you can do it. I believe in you. So here's an example of some testimonials from Rebilly. How scary was Docs' code to approach? So these are 3 people, real people, and they're all non-technical. So one of them is in, I guess 2 of them are in HR, and one of them is in customer success. So I wanted to show this to you because I had a feeling that for a lot of you, Docs' code is not scary. You already know it or you already do it. But so you can see that from other people's perspectives, actually it's pretty scary. Looking back at the time before they were, as they were just approaching it. And then I asked, how fast was the learning curve? And this one made me feel some sigh of relief. Okay. And what would you tell someone else who hasn't tried it yet? Can you see how having something like this would be helpful when you went to talk to the boss and the boss is thinking, oh, blank can't do it. Oh, I tried with a few people who aren't technical just to see, because I thought the same thing. I thought Emily wasn't going to be able to do it because she has no experience with programming or source control or Markdown. And this is what happened. Look, here are some of the things she said about it. So I've explained the steps behind the ABCs of Docs strategy: assess, build, convince. This is an overview of the what. And I find that the how section is best structured as an interactive workshop. Because if you're interested, I've got many more tactical lessons to guide you. I also promised to write the docs that I wouldn't come up here and sell anything. So I've got an interesting proposal, but nothing to sell. If enough of you are interested in participating in a 90-minute workshop with your community members, then I'll do it for free. And I won't charge anything or sell anything to those who attend. Instead, I'll donate $50 to charity for every person that attends. A lot of my teammates are in Ukraine, and a terrible war has displaced so many people, including children. And I've got a really soft spot in my heart for the children. So for each person that attends, I'll donate $50 to Save the Children, to support Ukrainian children displaced from war. I haven't picked a date yet. Thank you. I haven't picked a date yet, but to indicate your interest, please email me how@redocker.com. That's not my email address, that's an alias that goes to me, because I figure this is going to be broadcast on the internet, and then I will be receiving, a lot of spam. So I already get enough. Once again, to register, please email me to an alias I set up, how@redocker.com. Include in the body of your email your time zone and sort of the 3 best days of week, time of day slots as an optional bonus. Let me know one thing you liked about my talk and one thing you'd improve. This is my first time as a public speaker, so thank you. You can also find me on social media and in the Write to Docs Slack in these channels, Docs as Code, Doc Tools, and Documenting APIs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Do you want to
Thank
grab
you.
a seat, please?
All right. Is this the hot? Oh, this is hot.
That's a hot seat. All right. Thanks, everyone. I've seen a few questions come through, so I'm just going to quickly ask Adam. Adam, if I don't fall down before that, how do you assess the value of moving away from a CMS to Docs as Code model, other than in terms of money saved by not paying for a CMS anymore?
Yeah, so I think money saved isn't a good reason to migrate from a CMS. There's money involved in running a Docs as Code approach. I'm not that familiar with CMS pricing anymore, so I'm not the best. I'm sure there's some really expensive ones, so maybe it does make sense in the outlier. But usually, companies looking for something more, and that's why it's important to look for that transformation and to understand what that transformation is. So for us, it was about moving from 5 different systems to 1 system and helping transform from SaaS to a platform. It was like it was a mindset shift. Part of that had to do with embracing open standards and self-service thinking. So somehow, if you are interested in only making the transition for money reasons, this, in all times in recent history, this would be the time to do that because the economy is really shaky. But I think you should do it for a more positive reason than that.
Thank you. So this is an interesting question from Michael. I gradually got 30 developers to write Docs as Code while marketing and CS, I'm assuming that's customer support, remain holdouts. Any ideas on how to bring them around? They want to use Google Docs.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really like, so it's a challenge, but you have to make some reward very transparent to them and start with one person. So you have to find that one person who's going to help lead the way and be your shining example and make it seem like it is like using Google Docs shared drives. And it's just a different type of file. It's a plain text format. If you put an image in Google Docs, how easy is it to get that image out? Like I've done that so many times. It's so hard. You have to export the whole thing to HTML and then you can get your image out. There's lots of things about Google Docs that aren't easy, and it's got way more features to learn than using plain text files. So it's not that the learning is too hard. I think it's the resistance to change.
Thank you. In your talk, you did mention about the what of the Docs code, but any tips on persuading for developer resources around the migration to static site generators or implementation? So things like securing bandwidth maybe or sprint time when there's no developer on the Docs team.
Yeah, so having no developer on the Docs team, it's never pleasant, because you can run into a roadblock and end up totally stuck. So it's always good to find some resource, but you're part of a big community here, and there's a lot of people. Even in Slack, you'll go to the Docs code channel or the Doc Tools channel, and you'll be able to get help from your community members if you get stuck in a specific spot. Depends on how specific, and sometimes I know it's very challenging to communicate because you've got it's internal and you can't share too much information. So there are some challenges around that, but if you can, find one advocate, because many times a developer doesn't need a lot of time to unblock you. So they don't have to have a sprint dedicated to this. They need like 15 minutes. And they just answer a few of your questions in 15 minutes and you're unblocked, and you can make progress again for a few more days. And then you might need another 15-minute snack session.
That's a great tip. I think that having that champion is so important just in that context. Probably just have time for one more question. How does the Docs code fit with open source documentation and community influenced or created documentation? That's a relevant question.
Yeah, it's great. It fits really well, and you'll actually see some content management systems use Docs code for their docs. Not all, but some do. So you have a public repository. So with source control, you can have these repositories private, as most companies have their source control restricted and follow the principle of least privileges. But you can have a public repository. And in that public repository, you can house your docs, and then people can contribute to your docs. And like we had the good fortune of, thankfully actually through Swapnil, who got us to do the Google Season of Docs. And we got to meet Heather, who was a community member who participated and contributed to the redock docs. And now Heather has joined us as a full-time technical writer, which we're really grateful for, having met her and worked with her, made us not have to do an interview process, because we know how good her work is. We could move forward that way. So it's also a good opportunity if you are interested in just trying Docs code. You can try it on an open source project first and try to contribute some changes. It's not hard to browse open source docs and even just find typos and grammatical errors to make a very small change request just to see how that feels and see what happens.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we did some of that at Writing Day yesterday. There's a few projects that involved open source contributions. So thank you, Adam. I think we've run out of time. If you've got more questions, can people find you today and tomorrow at the conference? Also ask him about breakdancing. You might get some tips along the way. So thank you, Adam. And thanks for presenting today.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.